What's going on, everyone? So, a while back, we got some reports that there will be friendly competition between D'Angelo Russell and Gabe Vincent on the potential starting position, right? At the starting point guard. And I think that there will be a healthy dose of that for everybody in training camp, right? Outside of LeBron James and Anthony Davis, I think everybody else is in competition for a starting role, right? Even against Austin Reeves, guys like that. Darvin Ham really likes that. He likes that healthy competition. He's a very fair guy. He wants people to be able to earn that spot. I mean, Austin Reeves was able to do that last year, right? I mean, you saw Lonnie Walker be able to do that at times, right? And I think Darvin Ham is going to have a really good competitive training camp. And that's good, right? You want that competition. You want guys pushing each other. And there is a real argument for either of these guys, right? D'Lo gives you some playmaking, gives you some elite shooting, a guy that can be a three-level scorer. He can create his own shot, create for others. He's a bit of a defensive liability, but he's actually a pretty good playmaker, right? Where Gabe Vincent on the other side, he's more of a 3-and-D style point guard. Doesn't have great vision, isn't a great playmaker, but can knock down the three ball, is a good point of attack defensive guard, and a guy that, you know, you could put, like, if you're playing the Grizzlies or whatever, right? He'd be a good guy to put on Ja Morant as opposed to, you know, a D'Lo. Or you're playing the Warriors and you got to chase around Steph, right? You could put Gabe Vincent on him. And I wouldn't be surprised if these two even sort of alternate, right? Like, I could see these two maybe alternating, like, where one day, depending on the matchup, right? Like, again, you're playing the Warriors, maybe Gabe Vincent starts. You're playing the Grizzlies, maybe Gabe Vincent starts. You know, you're playing the Timberwolves, maybe D'Lo starts, right? Like, depending on the matchup, I could see that kind of dictating which one of these guys start. But the other sort of competition or just like opportunity for a player to potentially be a starter is the newly acquired Christian Wood, right? He's came out and said that, like, you know, hey, I was told that I would get a big role and I was told that I'd have an opportunity to prove myself and start. And Anthony Davis, based on the recent reports, he doesn't want to play center at all. If he has his way, he won't play center at all this entire season. And now playoffs is a completely different thing. He's more willing to buckle down and do what he's got to do to win an NBA championship. But if he doesn't have to play the center position at all during the regular season, he won't. And here's my thing, though. Let's say you do start AD at the 4, right? And Christian Wood, because look, all Christian Wood has to do is outbeat Jackson Hayes. Christian Wood is a better player than Jackson Hayes. Christian Wood would get the start if that were to happen. So now you have LeBron, you have Wood, you have Anthony Davis, right? That's your front court. And then you more likely than not have Austin Reeves as your 2. And then if you were to start D'Lo, I have a lot of concerns about defense, right? Now, I am of the mind, and personally, I think that they should go with the starting 5 that they went last year, right? Which is D'Lo, Reeves, Vando, LeBron, and AD. I think that has the best mix of complementary players and pieces that make a world of sense. You got 3 guys that are basically able to play make, but all 3 guys are able to play off the ball, right? You got LeBron, D'Lo, and Reeves. And D'Lo and Reeves especially are very good off the ball and are our best 3-point shooters. D'Lo shot just under 42% from 3, and Reeves shot 40%, and is probably going to shoot 40 to 42% this year. I mean, he just shot 55% or something like that from 3 in the FIBA, right? I know that that's not the NBA, but it's a lot more physical. Spacing isn't as good. Like, there's a lot that goes into that, right? A lot of differences. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. But I just think, like, you have 2 elite shooters. You have LeBron James, who's LeBron James. You have Anthony Davis, who's the best defense player in the league. And then you have Jared Vanderbilt, who is arguably the best, on-ball defender, perimeter defender in the entire league. So you have basically 2 of the top 5, maybe, defensive guys. And Then you have Austin Reeves, who's a serviceable defender. He's not like elite or great, but he's good, right? And I know some people are going after him for the FIBA thing, but it's different when you're guarding guards, and it's different than when you have to guard, 6'8" forwards and like centers and stuff like that. Big difference. But I digress, right? He's more than enough capable of handling his own on the defensive end. D'Lo is a defensive liability, and LeBron at this stage of his career, he can get it up for a moment. He can get it up for a stretch, right? He could probably even do it for a game. But to ask him game in and game out to just basically be locked down LeBron James defensively, locking up MVP Derrick Rose, LeBron James, it's a tall ask, right? So how do you make it work if you were to move Christian Wood into the starting lineup? Do you go positionless in a sense, which I don't hate the idea, where you have basically Reeves as your point guard, you have LeBron, Vando, Wood, and AD? I think that could work too, because Christian Wood's ability to shoot the three ball at a 38% clip, right? So you'd have 38% Christian Wood from three, who can also score from pretty much anywhere. He's a solid rebounder, not great, not elite, anything like that, but he's a good enough rebounder. He's better defensively than people give him credit for. I know he's had some rough stretches, he's had some rough moments, but he wasn't really all bought in regardless with Dallas. And he's had years like with Detroit where he was actually really good defensively, and he's actually a pretty good defensive guy around the perimeter and defending smaller guys. It's the bigger guys that he usually struggles with because he just isn't as physically dominant. Right? So, but having him, he'd be more than capable of being a serviceable defender. He's a better defender. He'd be better defensively than D'Lo would be, but he'd also provide shooting. You'd have Jared Vanderbilt, who could guard the best player on the other team. You'd still have LeBron and Austin Reeves as your basically primary ball handlers. And LeBron could still play the four on defense, right? And then you'd have Anthony Davis, who, he basically could play that scout role and be locked down defensively, right? So you could kind of do something like that. Personally, I think, though, if Christian Wood is going to start and you're not going to go the positionless route, I think you have to start Gabe Vincent, personally. Because let's look at it with D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Christian Wood. Your best defensive player is obviously Anthony Davis. Your second best defensive player is Austin Reeves. And again, he's good, not great. LeBron James, especially guarding threes, now you're asking him to basically have to lock down threes at 39 years old, year 21, with all the mileage and everything he has. I don't think that's the best course of action. And so he's not going to be able to do what he did last year, where he got to kind of just play in that like free safety role where he could just kind of observe and kind of like pick and choose his spots and defend fours and not have to really worry about it. You could have Christian Wood kind of defend out in the perimeter if you wanted to, right? But then Anthony Davis would have to buy into kind of playing the five on defense, which he might as well play the five, right? So the only way it works is Christian Wood defends the five, AD defends the four, and then LeBron's got to defend threes. D'Lo is a liability defensively. And although he did try, and he was actually better defensively for us than he was for the Timberwolves. And then you have Austin Reeves, who is an okay defender, right? Like, that becomes a problem. Offensively, you're probably really good, right? Because, again, you got D'Lo, you got Reeves, and you got Christian Wood, who all shoot 38% or better. And then you'd have Anthony Davis, who hopefully can find some of his stroke back. And then LeBron, if he can not be atrocious like he was last year from three, then you'd probably be pretty good offensively. It's just, can you stop anybody is the problem, right? And you're putting so much pressure on Anthony Davis on the defensive end, because he's got to basically be elite constantly. right? Because he's got to basically make up the slack for everybody else. But if you start Gabe Vincent, right, well, now you have a good defensive point guard. You got a point of attack guard alongside Austin Reeves, who's a serviceable, good defensive player. And then you have LeBron James, which still I don't like the idea of him having to chase around smaller threes for 30 minutes a game, over however many games he plays. I think he plays at least 65 games because he's going to want to qualify for all the accolades. But at least you'd have two good defensive guys up front. You have Anthony Davis, which that would take some pressure off Anthony Davis. Having Gabe Vincent kind of play in that Dennis Schroeder role. Gabe Vincent's a guy that can shoot 39% for three. He was pretty bad shooting the three ball last year. But in the playoffs, he picked it back up and got back to, the 39% or whatever, 38% I think it was. So if he can kind of get back to that, right, then you'd have Gabe Vincent, who's 38%, but also a better defender than D'Lo. You'd have Austin Reeves, who is a good defensive guy, shoots better than 38%. Christian Wood, who shoots 38% or better. So you still basically have the shooting, and you still have some of the defensive woes, but it's not as bad, right? And you have at least a point of attack guy, right? So you at least have, if you're playing the Warriors, you have him that can chase around Steph, right? And then LeBron can guard Wiggins, which, again, I'm not super stoked about. And then Reeves can chase around Clay, right? That's kind of how you could go about it. And then AD would guard, Draymond. Or based on recent reports, the Warriors are supposed to be starting a Chris Paul. So you're looking at probably a starting five of Chris Paul, Steph, Clay. I imagine Clay starts, Wiggins and Draymond, or Kevon Looney. So then you'd have Wood on Draymond. You'd have AD on Wiggins. And then LeBron. Do you really want LeBron having to chase around Clay? I would probably put LeBron at Chris Paul at this point. Because at least, LeBron can kind of stay in front of Chris Paul. Right? And then put Gabe Vincent on Steph. And then Reeves on Clay. Having to fight over those screens. But you see the dilemma. You see the issue. I just think if you're going to start Christian Wood, I think even if you start Jackson Hayes, right? Like if you go Jackson Hayes, AD, LeBron, Reeves, still think you go with Gabe Vincent. Right? I do. I think unless if AD's not playing center, I think you have to go with the better defensive guard. That's my thoughts. But anyway, how do you feel? Do you agree? Do you feel the same way? Do you not? How do you feel? Whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below.